Good morning everyone. In previous lecture we have discussed about algae and its two class, that is Chlorophyceae, which is known as a green algae, which possess major pigment chlorophyll A and B. Then we have discussed about Phaeophyceae, which is known as a brown algae, which possess main pigments chlorophyll A and C, then carotenoids and xanthophyll. Today we'll discuss about the third class, Rhodophyceae, which is commonly known as a red algae, because here the predominance of the red pigment, that is R-phycoerythrin. Erythrin, we know that erythrocytes, red blood cells. So due to presence of R-phycoerythrin, it looks red, and that is known as a red algae, that is Rhodophyceae. Majority of marine algae, these are mostly observed in marine, having greater concentration in warmer area. जहाँ पे थोड़ा warm area होता है वहाँ पे वो ज़्यादा देखने मिलते हैं. Which occurs in both well lighted region close to the surface of water, मतलब कि वाटर की सरफेस के नज़दीक जहाँ पे लाइट अच्छे से मिल रहा है, तो वेल लाइटेड रीजन्स क्लोज टू द सरफेस ऑफ वाटर, वहाँ पे देखने मिलता है. सेकंड, एट अ ग्रेट डेप्थ इन ओशन. ओशन में इतने डेप्थ में वेयर रिलेटिवली लिटिल लाइट पेनिट्रेट्स, मतलब कि ज़्यादा लाइट पेनिट्रेट नहीं होता है, तो वहाँ पे भी देखने मिलते हैं. Now the red thalli of most of the red algae are multicellular. उनकी जो थैलाई होती है वो कैसी होती है? मल्टीसेल्युलर. Some are having complex body organization. Most important, food is stored as a Floridian starch. This is most important. Food storage होता है कौन से फॉर्म में? Floridian starch, which is similar to amylopectin, that is polysaccharide, and glycogen in structure. Right? The food carbohydrate form में store होता है, which is in the form of Floridian starch. And this is similar to amylopectin and glycogen in structure. So Rhodophyceae, commonly called as a red algae, having red pigment, are phycoerythrin. Majority observes in warmer area, occurs in both well-lighted region and depth in ocean, multicellular, having complex body organization. Food is stored as a Floridian starch in the form of amylopectin and glycogen. Now let's talk about reproduction. So vegetative reproduction by fragmentation. As we know that fragment separated and forms new algae. Asexual reproduction, most important, by non-motile spores. देखो यहाँ पे spores non-motile है, that means we can say that flagella are absent, right? And sexual reproduction by non-motile gametes. So this is most important thing to remember in Rhodophyceae, that flagella are absent. And oogamous is accomplished by complex post fertilization development, मतलब कि fertilization के बाद भी उसमें development देखने मिलता है. Okay. Second thing, remember, so example are Polysiphonia, Porphyra, Gracilaria, and Gelidium. So remember, example: Polysiphonia, Porphyra, Gracilaria, and Gelidium. So you can see this diagram. Rhodophyceae, its example. This one is Porphyra, and this is Polysiphonia. Okay, so remember, this is the example of Porphyra, red algae, and this is Polysiphonia. Here this is frond, here main axis, and these are branches. Okay, so these are example of red algae. Okay, so remember, here flagella are absent, and main pigment is our phycoerythrin. Storage of food in Floridian starch, and cell wall, one missing, which is made up of cellulose, pectin, polysulfate esters. Right? So most important, cell wall, which is made up of cellulose, pectin, polysulfate esters. Flagella absent. As we know, habitat fresh water and even salt water, mostly salt water, right? An example: Polysiphonia, Porphyra, Gracilaria, and
this green layer is algae. These are simple thalloid, chlorophyll-bearing autotrophic organisms. You can spot algae growing on moist rocks and stones, in marine and freshwater, and on wood. Algae come in different forms and sizes. For instance, Chlamydomonas is unicellular, whereas Volvox is of colonial form, and Spirogyra is filamentous. On the other hand, kelps form massive plant bodies. Algae reproduce through vegetative, asexual, and sexual methods. Vegetative reproduction occurs by the process of fragmentation, wherein each fragment develops into a thallus, while asexual reproduction takes place through spores like zoospores. These spores are flagellated and germinate into new plants. During sexual reproduction, two gametes fuse to form a new organism. Based on the size of the gametes, sexual reproduction can be further divided into isogamous, anisogamous, and oogamous reproduction. When the fusion is between two gametes of similar size, the reproduction is called isogamous. The gametes in this case can be flagellated, as in Chlamydomonas, or non-flagellated, as in Spirogyra. When fusion takes place between two gametes of dissimilar size, the reproduction is termed as anisogamous. Oogamous is a fusion between a large, non-motile female gamete and a small, motile male gamete. Algae perform a wide variety of functions. They carry out carbon dioxide fixation and also increase the level of dissolved oxygen in their immediate surroundings through photosynthesis. They produce energy-rich compounds that form food for aquatic organisms. Algae are also used for commercial purposes. For instance, agar, obtained from Gelidium and Gracilaria, is used to prepare ice creams and jellies. Based on the type of pigment and the type of stored food, we can classify algae into Chlorophyceae, Phaeophyceae, and Rhodophyceae. Chlamydomonas, Volvox, and Spirogyra are some members of the class Chlorophyceae. They are commonly called green algae and can have a unicellular, colonial, or filamentous body. Their cell wall is rigid as the outer layer is made of pectose and the inner layer of cellulose. The cell has several chloroplasts that contain pyronoids, structures that have starch and protein. In definite chloroplasts, you can find the localized pigments chlorophyll A and B that give the algae the color of green grass. Green algae can reproduce vegetatively through fragmentation and asexually by flagellated zoospores, as well as sexually. Phaeophyceae is another class of algae, and Ectocarpus, Dictyota, Laminaria are some of its members. These species, commonly termed as brown algae, are mostly found in brackish or salt water. They display a wide variety in form and size. For instance, Ectocarpus displays filamentous form, whereas kelps are profusely branched and can measure 100 meters in height. They also vary in color due to the varying concentration of the pigments xanthophylls and fucoxanthin. Apart from these pigments, chlorophyll A, C, and carotenoids are the other major pigments found in brown algae. Let's now take a look at the body structure and cellular structure of brown algae. The plant body consists of a frond, a leaf-like photosynthetic organ, and a stipe that functions as a stalk. The frond and stipe are attached to the substratum by a holdfast. The vegetative cells of brown algae have a cellulosic wall, which usually has an outer gelatinous coating of algin. The protoplast inside the cell has plastids and a centrally located vacuole and nucleus. Brown algae produce through fragmentation and asexually through biflagellate spores. On the other hand, in sexual reproduction, the gametes unite either in water or within the Oogonium. Rhodophyceae is another class of algae whose members include Polysiphonia, Gracilaria, and Gelidium. The members are often called red algae. The red color is due to a high concentration of the red pigment R. phycoerythrion. The thalli of red algae are multicellular, and food is stored as Floridian starch inside the cells. Red algae are found in brackish and salt water, and mostly in warmer areas. Red algae reproduce vegetatively, asexually through non-motile spores, and sexually through motile spores. Thus we have seen that there are a variety of algae that thrive in the aquatic habitat.